The race. Dated my wife for about 2 years, then got married and have been for 14 years. She was amazing and I thought I treated her well. Our physical life before marriage was so amazing. It was so good because I loved her with all of my heart and she was in as my soulmate. We have one son and made the mistake of working our schedules, so one of us was always with him. Please don't ever do this, it will ruin your marriage. I really feel our physical life took a plunge downward almost right after our wedding. Currently I haven't had slept with her in almost 4 years. I admit I wasn't helpful around the house as I should have been. We both kind of fell into habits when we were at home alone, me video games or TV, and we kind of kept these up when off together. This didn't start at first, just kind of started happening over the years. I would totally beg her for bonding and she would push me away. It got to the point of just trying to kiss her and she would push me away. Last August I started to suspect something was up. She stopped saying she loved me and I let it go for a while, then couldn't help myself, started snooping around her laptop. Came across an email to a girlfriend of hers where she was going on about how unhappy she was and wanted a divorce. I was devastated as I had no idea how unhappy she was. I mean, I was unhappy too, but not to that point. We also struggled with financial problems and I did not help her during those times. I would spend money and didn't care. Yeah, I know I'm a piece of trash, I get it. Well, some more snooping and I found a letter she had written but not sent to a guy she dated like a whole bunch of years earlier, telling him how she still loved him and wanted to be with him. I felt like I could just faint when I read that, like I couldn't breathe and wanted to throw up. I confronted her with it and she said she wanted a divorce. I admitted I cried like a complete baby. Well, she agreed to work on it and I changed completely. Everything she said she was unhappy with, I changed. Granted, I screwed it up big time and did all the things I shouldn't have. The whole following around like a puppy dog and whatnot. Should mention she is in mid-40s, me 40. She suffers from depression and migraines. I went to counseling like she suggested and changed all I could. Fast forward to earlier this year. She wasn't putting any effort into anything. I snooped again. I feel bad for this. Found a secret email account and a whole bunch of emails from some guy she met on Craigslist. Very dumb way to meet someone in my opinion. Emails suggested a meeting. I showed up there and confronted them. I played it cool and didn't crash a chair over dude's head as I wanted to. I got up the next day and she had the balls to be pissed at me for reading her emails. She said, it was only dinner. Like that makes it cool. We are at this point just residing in the same house. I am at work about 3 weeks later. I work nights and get a bad vibe. So, I leave work early and come home to just miss them in bed together. I confront her and she says, yeah, we had slept together. In our bed in my house like I'm nothing, just dirt or trash. Like our life together means nothing. So, I moved out right away. I am now living with her mom. Yeah, that's right, her mom. Her whole entire family have been so awesome to me, it's crazy. It's not that they just support me though. They just think what she is up to is so wrong. I have been coping okay with it, I guess. Some days are a total nightmare, like put a gun to my head and end it all bad. Some days I am so angry I want to cut her head off. Some days I cry for no reason. I mean, I once was a man, tough guy, no emotion, you know, typical grab my crotch and man up kind of guy. Now I feel like I have no balls, crying all the time. Her family has been so great though. As it stands though, she has it all. A guy that gives her a good time all the time. She said so on Facebook, making fun of me behind my back, our house and whatnot. She did come to me and want me to pay half the second mortgage. I told her she was out of her mind. Comments. The very first thing I suggest you do is get over feeling bad about snooping. You snooped because you loved her. You snooped because you were trying to figure out why she was so distant. Still, when you had put so much effort in to make the marriage work, I know you realize now that one spouse can twist into a pretzel to help the marriage, but if the other partner isn't also working hard, it's pretty much for naught. I strongly recommend getting tested for STD. Also, see a doctor to help you cope with the depression. You'll probably barely get the words out before your doctor will write you a prescription. The meds are not a crutch. They will not make you happy. They will just lift you out of the very bottom of the trench you're in so that you can think more clearly and make good choices. Good for you to have told her family and to see how incredibly supportive they are of you. That is a huge point in your favor. It is a shame that she is so far gone that this apparently doesn't influence her to change her ways. The fact that you showed up and she had the courage to say it's just dinner indicates to me that what she has grown accustomed to is walking all over you. She has zero respect for you in any way. You should not have moved out of the home. The first thing I'd do is move back in and make her move out if she can't stand to share the home with you. Moving out can influence your situation legally. It is especially important to do this since you have a son. OP responds, I now have my own checking account and there are no joint accounts. I know where the guy lives and am trying to gather intel. I will soon have his plate number and will run it to get all info. I haven't even talked to her about the marriage in a long time. I am 180ing it right now. The only contact we have is like 1 or 2 a week to exchange clothes for our son. He is split between us equally. Not sure I can live there as I am afraid I will go nuts on him, her and end up in jail. I work in a branch of law enforcement and will so lose everything if I get locked up. When I do see her it's like for 1 minute at a time and I barely speak to her. I am going to make sure it's even less from here on out. She tells me to come to our joint house to pick up our son, and then there are times when she says don't come. That's when I know dude is there. One more thing is this is at some point in time I guess going to end in a divorce. She will be keeping the house as even with alimony. She makes quite a bit more than me. I couldn't afford to live there by myself. I have started back in the gym. Not to brag, but I used to be in awesome shape. I worked hard at it. That is helping me. I am now running again and busting my butt to get back in shape. I just feel kind of like, man, I didn't deserve this. I would have never done this to her or any girl I was ever with. The pain is so intense, like nothing I have ever felt before. I have been out of the house since March 3rd. One shining bright spot is I have been paying large amounts on the one credit card I have since I told her I was done paying on the house. Also, if I move back and there is no way I can pay the bills there, I know she is really struggling, as she said so to her mom. I did talk to a lawyer about some of this. Her mom actually paid for me to go. He said, yeah, stop paying any house bills and don't fight her to keep in a marriage as it's over. Harsh, but I guess he's right. I thought about filing, but I am scared her family won't understand. I am also scared she will throw that in our son's face. He is 11 and he knows this is her decision, not mine. He knows I love her very much and have told him so. I should mention too, we are both religious. I know that shouldn't have anything to do with it. As far as I don't know. Times I do and times I don't. I don't love the person she has become. Maybe I'm in love with what I remember of us, I don't know. I do know I deserve someone who loves me, don't I? I don't know, as thing makes me question everything about me. I don't think so, as they have all expressed nothing but disgust for what she has done. Is doing. Most of them have tried talking to her and letting her know it's wrong to do this. I know my son doesn't know about the other man. We are taking him to counseling each separately, so from that perspective I know she has no plans to end this. I have considered filling. The lawyer told me wait and let her do it, as it will save me about $250. I know she could drag this on forever, and at some point, I will have to make a jump if I want to move on with my life. The lawyer I talked to is way too expensive for me. His retainer is $4,000 and he charges $400 an hour. My friend told me about his lawyer and he charges a bit less, so I may talk to him. I just don't get it though. What kind of person does this to another person? She was supposed to be my best friend. I guess she has no morals, is that right? We just have a house, no retirement or anything else. One car, mine one SUV, hers. That's it. We paid off $56,000 of debt in 5 years and were set this year to make some serious home improvements and start retirement saving. We had also talked of buying a beach home and renting it out. She always did what her family wanted her to do. From whom she dated to everything. She definitely felt constricted by them. She told her sister the same thing on Facebook one day. Wow man, you hit it. She is also used to getting her own way. She is probably the most controlling person I have ever met. As far as an STD, I really haven't even had anything physical in almost 4 years, so I guess I could go get tested, but I can't imagine I would have anything, but who knows. I will schedule an appointment this week. At times I feel like I'm going crazy. Yeah, she has made all the problems of our marriage out to seem like it's my fault. For a while it took all the blame upon me. I was racking my brain going over everything she said I did wrong, and I owned up to it to her as well. At times the anger in me wants to come roaring out, and I just know if I X her in the face as hard as I can, I will feel better. I would never do this, as that's not who I am. I have never laid a hand on her. Like Friday, I get my son's things from her and she says, "Have a nice weekend." Really? She is standing there in a t-shirt that has a certain character on it I don't want to say. Well, the secret email she set up is the name of that same character. So, she is right in my face with this. A month later, I talked to another lawyer who was recommended by my friend. The divorce should be smooth, he said. As I gave him all the secret email screenshots, asset would be split in half, but I wouldn't owe her anything, and I got a future ahead of myself. As for my son, because I have the higher income, and with the evidence I have, the custody should be easy. I still can't believe they threw her family away for some random guy. But I can't control what she does. I can only start to figure out what is next. Story 2. D-Day, February 27th at 6. I am in utter shock and disbelief. I am 24 years old and I have been only married for 2.5 years. I have been with my husband for 6.5 years. I've suspected there was something wrong for the past few months. My husband has distant and sad with all of these emotions coming to a head on February 17th while we were on the way to the airport for a week-long, much-needed vacation. We were driving in the car and all of a sudden, he just started to cry. Something he hasn't done since very early on in our relationship. He told me he was just having a bad day, which was true, as he had hurt his back at work early that week and was trying to sort out frustrating paperwork with workers' compensation. I didn't really buy it as being entirely related to stress from work, but my explanation was that he was suffering from a mental health issue. I honestly have thought for months that he was suffering from depression. We continued on our trip. I spent the whole time worrying that he was going to hurt himself. He was distant and spent most of the vacation on our computer and iPhone. Frankly, it was a miserable vacation, especially pretending to be happy around my family. At some point during the trip, he admitted he had a problem and that he wanted to get help and talk to someone. I came home feeling positive that we were going to get him help and subsequently help our relationship. I went to work Monday morning and had a good day. I drove the long commute home thinking about making a nice supper and having an honest conversation with my husband about how I had been feeling. Lonely. When I arrived home, he was still at appointments dealing with his back and getting back to work. He had left his Facebook open on our computer. I don't know what made me look, but maybe it was all the time he had spent on the computer on our trip. He had a message from one of his colleagues, who he has always claimed was one of his best woman friends. At first, I thought it was just a joke. His words jumped off the page. "I love you so much," that could be friendly, right? I continued to read vulgar, revolting messages about physical acts, details about what he wanted to do with her. Worse than just bonding. "I want to be able to walk down the street holding your hand and fall asleep with you in my arms." I screamed. I cried. He arrived home somewhere in the midst of all this. I threw my wedding ring at him. I slapped him across the face. He tried to talk. I couldn't make myself listen. I screamed more. I feel that all I have done for the past 2 days is cry and scream. What I have found out. It has been going on for 4 months. They have had slept together 4 to 5 times. He claims that the things he said to her were just words and that he wanted her to like her, so he was saying what he thought she would want to hear. I know the girl. She has always been rude and mean to me anytime I had any encounters with me. She has a child, a boyfriend and a girlfriend. She believes in open relationships, but her boyfriend who she lives with does not. I feel like I'm having a Sandra Bullock moment. She is the anti-me. She has tattoos, fake boobs and a vulgar personality. My husband is sorry and says he is desperate to make things work with me. He is talking future and says the decision is all up to me. I am nowhere close to deciding anything about the future. I realize his depression is no excuse, but I cannot seem to separate his depression from the affair. It is entirely unfair that I need to be concerned about his well-being while dealing with my own emotion, but I can't seem to figure out how to look at these issues independently. I don't even know how to feel. How do I even begin to pick up the pieces? I don't know anyone my age that this has happened to. As of right now, I am sleeping in the spare bedroom and he's sleeping on the couch. His parents know and have been trying hard to be there for me. My husband is seeing a psychiatrist Friday. I think that's one of the most complicated parts, is that I worry if I make any drastic moves it's going to push him over the edge. I realize that's not fair for me and that I shouldn't even be concerned about it, but it's hard to stop caring about his well-being even though I loathe him right now. I was contacted by the O last night via text. She berated me and called me to the lowest. Told me I was fat, boring, useless, pretentious. I thought I had been prepared for some sort of a blow-up at some point in time, but it was a million times worse than I could have imagined. It is shocking to me that someone who is supposed to be so insignificant had such an effect on me. She threatened me physically, and when I told her to stay out of our life, she responded with no problem. I plan on staying out of your life. I felt that she was trying to make the point very clear that she has no intentions of not contacting my husband, who has promised me to not have contact with her again. She alluded to the fact that they are still talking, seeing each other as well. Then I received a text from her apologizing and saying that she didn't mean everything she had said and that she would leave and never contact me again. Again, nothing about my husband. It was almost as if she wanted me to feel sorry for her since she now has to quit her job and leave her home. Even though I know she has wanted all of these things for a long time, since her own relationship has been on the rocks for years, held together for their son. Seriously, how am I supposed to cope with any of this, or even make sense of any of it? Trickle truth and separation 1 month out. I feel like I don't even know who my husband is or has been for the past few months. It will be a month tomorrow since D-Day. I discovered via Facebook messages that my husband had been having an EAP with his coworker that lasted 4 months. It took me a while, but I had come to the conclusion that I wasn't ready to quit without at least making an effort to make our marriage work. We have been married for 2.5 years and together for 7. I was clear to my husband that just because I wanted to try to fix things, I couldn't promise him or at this point. He has been the one on the fence during this whole thing. He says he doesn't want to have anything to do with the O, but NC has definitely not been maintained, as I found out from our phone bill last week. They had been texting back and forth. He says he doesn't know what he wants. He has moved out and is living with friends 3 hours away. Some of our conversations go well, others not so much. Yesterday we had a great conversation about how we were both feeling, but then he told me that both his psychiatrist, he was depressed, and therapists think he should open his own bank account and a new phone line. They also think it is good for him to be away. I am devastated. I moved to our current city for him because it is where his family is. But I have no one, and now he is gone too. He is talking about how much he loves the place he is staying, and it makes me feel so bitter since I do not have the luxury of picking up and leaving. He has been at his job for almost 7 years and has great short-term illness leave benefits. I started my job 3 weeks before I found out about the affair and therefore have a first impression to make. On top of all these feelings of being abandoned, he told me today in the spirit of being open and honest that he had been using meds over the last 4 to 5 months. I knew about the week, but the fact he dabbled in something harder really has me shaken up. This is not the man I fell in love with and married. It is one thing to try to fix a marriage with someone that you have known for so long, but when that person has apparently changed so much, how can I find it in myself to get over the deceit? It's been 5 weeks since I found out about my H's 4-month EA, Pia, with a coworker. He has been depressed for the last year. I only noticed in the last 3 months prior to finding out, and he was about to X himself when I found out. Both he and the O have transferred job locations so that they will not be working together or around any other persons involved. Like OWP and brother of OWP have threatened physical violence against my H. He has been off on stress leave since I found out, and even spent 2 weeks with friends a 3-hour drive away. He is the one who is maintaining he doesn't know what he wants, and I have been clear that I want to make an effort to work through everything that happened, with no promises that I can. I am going through individual therapy, and he is seeing a psychiatrist for the mental health problems as well as a therapist. My question is, when is the best time to start counseling together? His psychiatrist and therapist have both recommended he spend time away from me, but I feel like I am at the point in my own personal journey with this that I need to talk through things with him. When I try to do that on our own, it always ends up in a huge blow-up because I am asking questions he doesn't want to answer. I feel like I need someone to mediate these conversations so that I can start to work through what happened. Ran into my H's AP while I was heading into the gym, and she was going into the pizza place next door. This would be vaguely satisfying if she weren't one of the most physically fit people I know. But she is. I totally froze. She was actually just going to walk right past me without saying anything, although the smug grin on her face said it all. I muttered something about her getting out of my face, and then she said, "Just getting pizza," and laughed out loud at me. Why couldn't I have been the strong, independent, graceful, and classy woman that I totally imagined myself being in that moment? Instead, I was a weak, bumbling fool. I'm trying to convince myself that it doesn't matter, because she doesn't matter. But that awful pit in your stomach, heart in your throat feeling I experienced just won't go away. Update 3 months out, still have my days. Just past the 3-month point at the end of last month, and I guess the best way to summarize is there are good days and bad. My biggest struggle right now seems to be competing emotions and triggers. I thought it would get easier when my H's affair stopped consuming my every waking minute, but what I have learned is that it actually feels harder. Now, instead of feeling constantly sad or preoccupied with what happens, I could be going on my life at work, or at the gym, or with friends, and then boom, he slept with her. That has got to be the most mind-blowing and pervasive thoughts a person could ever relive over and over again about their husband. Even now it still takes my breath away. I don't know how many times in a social setting I have had to excuse myself to cry privately in the bathroom or around the corner. I've even had a few pretty big meltdowns, thankfully around good and understanding friends. We are going to MC every week, and my H is doing about the same, and I see he is still very much so battling his own depression and now dealing with some anxiety issues as well. It has been about a week of him staying over every night he isn't working, but he is still effectively living elsewhere because all of his things are still there. I have no faith or trust that this isn't a temporary transition. He has been so unpredictable over the last 3 months that I just never know if anything is permanent. I am still majorly struggling with trust issues with him. He has become increasingly more transparent with details, text messages, and passwords, so that is helping, but I very easily get my back up when I see him slipping into old patterns like hanging out with friends who are girls, which has always been his way, although until the affair I would never have worried about it. I am struggling with own feelings of disappointment, resentment, and wanting to feel emotionally fulfilled by someone who never put me second. I want to work things out with my H, and we are working on that, but I wonder if there has been a flop in a sense, where in the beginning he was the one with one foot out the door, and now I am. I've heard it through the grapevine that the O is struggling. I have never been this type of a person, but to this I say, karma is a B. It actually breaks my heart that I could ever feel so much hatred towards someone, but I find pleasure in the fact that she is currently, apparently, off work on stress leave, begging her BS to take her back. He is now dating someone new and has gained 50 pounds. They have a kid together, so I am very angry at my H for screwing up that poor child's life. But I feel no sense of commitment to the O, who has been nothing but cruel to me since D-Day. And even before. O is moving back to town. Well, the B is back. Got the devastating news this and I have been reeling ever since. For anyone who hasn't followed my posts, my H had a 4-month EA, Pia, with his coworker. After D-Day they both transferred positions. My H within a 40 minutes commute of our town, and the O 3 hours away. Exactly where I enjoyed having her. The O and the OWM have now decided to work things out. I am actually shocked it is happening, considering the OWM had already started dating and had a GF. But apparently, she has manipulated him back into the relationship. I realize the irony of this statement considering I am also attempting to work things out with my H. So, what this means is that I now have to share a 5,000-person town with a serious class act. She has done nothing but berate me in the past 3.5 months, including telling me it was my fault my husband was attracted to her because I needed to lose 80 pounds and laughing in my face the first time I ran into her when she was down visiting her child. Part of me feels like I may as well run for the hills now. The other part of me is just deadly pissed off. To top that all off, tonight my husband revealed this deep dark secret about the O's past that, frankly, is awful, and I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but I felt like it was an excuse he was using to say, "You would be an awful person too if this happened to you." So, 2 things from that one. It felt like he was saying the way she has treated me is understandable given her past. Not okay, but understandable. And 2, it made me realize how intimate and emotionally involved they really were. No one shares this type of information with a random hookup. He obviously cared, or cares, about her, and that just ruins me. The secret isn't something I could use again without make myself look like a huge insensitive b her BF would know as well. And frankly, I would imagine that is half the reason he is working on things with her. It sounds like she is saying the reason she has done what she has done is because of her horrible past. Well, guess what, sweetheart? Walk a mile in anyone's shoes and we all have our baggage. I am in no way comparing her issues to anything that has happened to me. But for example, the fact that my H had an affair doesn't give me the right to belittle someone else because I hate the world. And it certainly doesn't give me the right to cheat on any future partners I might have if things don't work out between my H and me. My husband knows I won't put up with any crap from her anymore, but without breaking NC there isn't really a whole lot he can do about it. And I would rather the NC remain and I get some grief from her than they strike up a conversation again. I have thought about moving, but I stepped out of school and into my dream job in December. One that people in my position and level of experience, or lack thereof, rarely get the opportunity to pursue. Literally, I haven't met a person in my profession yet that hasn't started the conversation with, "Wow, you are so young. You are lucky to have gotten this job." So, leaving would essentially be career ending. And the O and her OWM will not be leaving either. My husband refuses to work in our town now, so he travels 40 minutes for work. Not to mention our family is here. He really royally screwed me here. NC broken at 5 months post D-Day. Things have been very tense between H and I for the last 2 weeks. No real reason, although we are both feeling very stressed, drained, exhausted from the last few months, and we have been working opposite shifts for work. Me days and nights still aren't back living together, although he came and went several times, and although things had been looking up for a while. It really is the worst it has been right now. So, I hadn't heard from him any more than a text or 2 for the past 2 days, and anytime I tried to get a hold of him his phone was going right to voicemail and his mailbox was full. Finally, I texted him and said, "Did I do something wrong?" He responded quite some time later that it wasn't anything I had done, but rather he was feeling really stressed because the O had been trying to contact him for the last 3 days. She had been calling him incessantly. Apparently, I found out after the fact she has broken up with the OWM for good and that her dad just died recently. My H essentially told me not to worry, he was screening his calls and had no interest in talking to her, and that's why his phone had been off. She had left at least 1 voicemail and it was just like a pocket dial type message with nothing actually in it. He was keeping the mailbox full so she couldn't leave another. He said she hadn't texted him at this point. My response, "Change your phone number." His response, "I think it's done. I haven't heard from her in a bit." That was yesterday. Today she continued to call. No real contact between my H and I as I was working. When I got home from work, he had already left, significantly earlier than he needs to leave. I found out from a friend of ours that he had gone to work early because the O had texted him saying that she wasn't leaving town until he talked to her and that she was going to wait outside his place till he came home. So, to avoid the whole thing he left early for work. Frankly, at this point I was doing backflips. Clearly, she is a B, but he was doing mostly all the right things, ignoring her primarily, although I could have used a bit more communication between us. Then he sends me a text. I texted her, "She's never going to bother me again." I could have seriously X'd someone. I think I had a mini rage blackout. Like he could have changed his number, blocked her number, called the cops and said she was annoying him, but instead, he acknowledged her. I checked the phone statement and there were 4 texts sent from him. He told me all he said to her was, "You can't talk to me." And unless he broke that up like a word per text, that's his total BS. I am so mad, and I don't even know what to do. Part of me wants to hunt down the O and give her a piece of my mind. The other part of me just wants to quit trying, for our 5 months of talking has done nothing. Clearly, if he chooses to comfort the OW over her crappy life circumstances. I may sound insensitive cause I realize losing a family member is tough. But seriously, I don't owe her anything. They, I should really say, pissed on our marriage like it was no more important than dirt. Months later, Final update. The On Again of Again R is back on. Previously I had felt like when we were working on things it was going well, but this time around, I do notice a huge difference. My H is pulling a lot of weight trying to make things work, talking about the affair. Talking about how he's feeling and generally being very open and honest. We ended up spontaneously getting away together and booked a cottage only a few minutes from my work. I usually commute an hour and a half each way 5 days a week, so this was a treat for me. It was a great week. I would get home each night from work and he would have a beautiful meal prepared. We would talk, clean up together, watch TV, even played an intense game of Monopoly that lasted several hours and had us both in stitches laughing by the end. We both knew that it would be harder when we came home, but we both wanted it and still do. We spent 2 days together since getting home in our house, for the first time in almost 4 months. Today we had another great conversation about where both of our heads are at. I admitted I was starting to feel happy again, and he the same. He ended the conversation by saying that he hoped nothing negative happened because he felt like we were in a good place. Fast forward 2 hours and he's calling me from work to say that the crazy bee, other woman, I will from now on refer to her as Cow, called his work phone to say she loves him and wants him back. She apparently went off the handle when he told her he had just spent a week with me away, and that we were working on things and that he loved me, not her. She proceeded to tell him that she would tell the OWH everything. I guess so that he would be pissed off at my H, and that she would tell me everything as well in an effort to ruin our relationship. She ended the conversation by saying that she wished he pass away. My husband was devastated. He called me from work and was clearly shaken. He has told me everything that I want to know. I'm sure there is more to tell, but when you know your husband had a P as well as saying he loved her and wanted to leave me, who really cares about all the details like where or when it happened? Anyways, she did call me. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail actually made me laugh as to how desperate she sounded. I might even say manic, sad, pathetic and desperate. Everything she said in the message was either old news to me, desperate exaggeration of the truth, or a plain lie, like saying she was with him when he was in fact playing Monopoly with me. I won't lie, she said lots of things that stung, but mostly I felt sorry for her. She ended the whole message by essentially saying she will find me because she wants to talk to me. I saved the message just in case I need to go to the cops. How you guys deal with a person like this? You had any similar experience? Comment down below. Sub and bell and stay safe in a time like this.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick, is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him, and he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.